Thank you for joining us today. We are delighted that you could join us to talk about Shopify and how Shopify can be a tremendous enabler for people looking to grow their businesses, especially if you're looking at international markets. E-commerce by definition is cross-border. As soon as you start opening up a store, people come to it. So there you go. Thank you so much for joining us. Just while the last of you I see are logging in, I'm going to sort of just introduce ourselves, if I may. If I get my cursor to work. I'm delighted that we are joined today by the chair of NADEC, Anne Burkett, and also the vice chair of NADEC, Tom Dussman. Tom doubles up as well as an important international director for Sinan Products in St. Louis. And actually, I have a surprise guest who's not on there, who's not on that slide, but Lisa Chestnut is with us, and Lisa is someone who is going to be really important for this particular webinar, because she looks after all the Shopify and web assets for Sinan Products based in St. Louis. So Lisa, I'm sorry that your photo's not there, but Lisa is here with us today, and I think you can all see her and wave, so so you can help us answer questions and give us a view also of how Sinan Products are dealing with things. I'm joined by my amazing colleague, Joelle. Joelle Lazzarotto is the marketing director. She heads up the entire team of our digital marketing team, which is spread out over like 5-6 different countries, or more than that, 10 different countries. And Joelle is here to talk about digital marketing and the role that plays when you're looking at e-commerce. So Joelle is here, and then myself, my name is Susanna, and I'm Chief Content Officer at IBT Online. Just to sort of say, what is IBT Online? IBT Online is a full, what's called a full stack digital marketing company. So we're a U.S. company. We're headquartered in Fort Lauderdale in Florida, but we've got offices elsewhere. We have offices in the UK, France, Germany, South Korea, China, the GCCs, and so on. Because we're quite known for our global presence and our help that we give to U.S. exporters in particular. We are what's called a full stack digital marketing company. So what we do is everything from digital marketing, e-commerce, website design and build, something called localization, which we'll talk a little bit about when we talk about e-commerce, and then AI. Hey, we can't avoid it. So we've got some AI stuff going on as well. I think most people do. We have strategic partnerships with a lot of U.S. states where we run programs for their companies, and we also have our partnership with NADEC, which we're very proud of, and helps us with this webinar today. So getting down to subjects, like what we thought we'd do is we break the webinar up into sort of 7 little areas that we're going to talk about, and just sort of break them down into those segments and share, share the speech between us. So Anne and Tom are going to tell us a little bit about NADEC and some events that are coming up. Then I'm going to take it back and talk about the e-commerce landscape in general. We're going to then dig right into Shopify. What does it do well? What does it do less well? What are apps, and who invented that name? How do you scale with it? What are the absolute must-haves in your toolbox? What about exporting? What does cross-border e-commerce mean? And then we're going to round out with cost, KPIs, and your ROI, your return on investment. So those major factors that you need to look at in e-commerce. We have left some time at the end for some questions, and we would welcome them. Just pop them into the chat box or the question box, and we'll get to them at the end as well. I'm really excited to get started on this webinar. I would say we realize that you're all busy running companies. We realize that your time is precious and that you're super busy. So we're very grateful that you've taken this time out of your day, and we would appreciate, turn the other screen off, switch the phone off. Come and spend some time with us, and let's learn about Shopify. And we're a manageable. There's actually a lot of demand for this, but there's a manageable group, so don't feel shy. with that, I'm going to ask Anne to tell us a little bit about NADEC. Anne.
Thank you, Susanna. I am really pleased to be representing NADEC today, and we are pleased to be a partner with IBT Online for this webinar. E-commerce, as you said, that by just the name is cross-state, cross-country commerce, and we're looking forward to learning more about it and how important it is in the international trade arena. We also are looking forward to learning more about IBT Online and how it's working with Shopify to increase international business opportunities. So a little bit background about NADEC for those that may not be familiar. We're the NADEC stands for the National Association of District Export Councils. And so we are made up of 61 district export councils across the U.S. and approximately 1,500 members that are all appointed by the U.S. Secretary of the Commerce. And our purpose is to help exporters in our local communities at the grassroots level. So NADEC is working to support the 61, what we call DECs out across the country. And this is one of the things that we're doing is partnering with IBT Online to offer this webinar. And I know a number of our DECs have also been getting the word out about this webinar. So I'm hoping that many people in the DEC community are joining us today. Also, as Susanna mentioned, Tom Dustman is the vice chair of NADEC, and he's with us here. And we are hosting our annual conference this year in Nashville, Tennessee. And we would welcome you all to join us there. And Tom is chairing the conference as vice chair of NADEC. And so I'd like Tom just to say a few words about the conference coming up in May. Tom?
Thank you very much, Anne, and thank you, Susanna. And I might mention for all of you who are on the webinar, Anne is with the Alabama DEC, and I'm with the Missouri DEC. And again, we provide assistance to companies who are brand new to exporting and have questions of how to and what should we avoid and how do we work for success. And if you are an exporter and you want to expand your exports by maybe moving to other countries or other regions, all of us on the district export councils have some level of experience and expertise to be able to be of help. But focusing now on the NADEC Annual Export Conference, this year we are in Nashville, Tennessee, and we are working very, very closely with the Tennessee DECs. There are two of them in that particular state. And this is a really valuable opportunity that you can network with others who are registered for the conference. We expect somewhere around 200 registrants. And the conference itself is a day and a half long. We begin with registration early in the morning on May the 12th, which is a Tuesday. And the conference will be held at the Gaylord Opryland Resort Hotel. And during those sessions, which would last all day, we have a combination of speakers that would be representing not only the Department of Commerce, but the Federal Reserve. We've got invitations out to high-powered speakers from the Ag Department, also from the XM Bank, the Tennessee Banking Association, USMCA, the Free Trade Agreement that is up for reauthorization later this year. And those are just a few of the speakers that we will have at our session. And importantly, for those of you who are on this call, we will have a networking opportunity during the conference that would include some focused efforts on various regions and various countries. Again, all intending to be able to help those who attend the conference. So we really look forward to this conference. It's an annual event. Typically, we hold it in Washington, D.C., but this particular year, we decided to move out of Washington, D.C. and get out into the exporting community, and we picked the Tennessee area as our area for this year. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Susanna.
I think Tennessee and the Old Opry is a wonderful idea, Tom. Thank you very much. That's a tremendous event. Right. Let's talk a little bit more. Then I want to just start with some basics really about e-commerce. And even before we do that, I'm gonna get a little bit of audience participation here. So I wanted to ask you, is your company already using e-commerce? Are you already there? Is this something that you're ready with Shopify, for example? Are you? Oh, there's lots of answers here. Some of you are not with Shopify. Some of you are with Shopify. Some of you are still thinking about it. So we have a lot of different answers, but I do appreciate the responses and things. It's quite evenly matched at the moment. So anyway, but I just wanted to say there's a couple other polls going to come, and I appreciate that. So we have a very wide spectrum from our audience, from yes, I'm with Shopify, no, I'm not with Shopify, but we're doing e-commerce. And then the other ones who are like, well, we're still at the investigation phase. Thank you very much for that, Paul. I'm going to close that and let's get started. I want to give some sort of background, just sort of numbers and sort of general background about e-commerce. E-commerce is an absolutely global thing. Throughout the world. So you think if you're like me, sitting in your lunch break or after work, you say, okay, I'm going to buy something, and you go online, or your company, and you're buying things for your company online. It seems like it's all the time, but in fact, the USA represents less than 15% of global e-commerce. E-commerce is really truly global. The white bar here is the worldwide average of number of people in each country that does e-commerce. And places like Thailand, it seems like the entire place is online the whole time. But the USA is the blue arrow. I've highlighted with a blue arrow. And when we think of e-commerce, we tend to think of B2C, naturally. But that's really because the B2B stats are hard to get a hold of. But B2B is much larger than B2C. It's roughly 3 times the size of B2C. So, and definitely the pandemic sort of, pushed that whole ahead, that trend ahead. So it was growing before, it's growing, in fact, it's continued now. So that most B2B companies now, if they don't have some sort of e-commerce functionality, they are thinking about it. It doesn't have to be a full e-commerce. It doesn't have to have a payment gateway and things like that. A lot of B2B e-commerce functions end with a request for proposal rather than a payment. So, but really, it's really a major shift for that. And I've gone the wrong way. Sorry about that. Here we go. There. One of the issues that we all have is that Amazon has taught everybody to do an amazing job. I mean, you can buy something on Amazon and it turns up in your mailbox the next day. So we're all used to this. We're used to seamless and fantastic logistics, amazing experience on the web, good pricing and comparative pricing, and all kinds of things. So the B2B e-commerce is kind of like driven by the B2C experience. The B2C experience, is driven by Amazon. So, it's a tough market out there. You've got to really be very strong in all of this and very good in this. And that's going to be tough. It's one of the things that we're going to highlight a couple of times in this webinar is that, people, what we're going to highlight is the fact that it takes a lot of trust to go onto a website, to click onto a product, put it into a cart, and then submit payment details to it. That takes a lot of trust. And so everything has to be seamless and perfect for that trust to be there and to exist and to be good. I'm going to ask Joelle now, where does Shopify fit in all this? Joelle.
Thank you so much, Susanna. And Shopify, I find, is really interesting platform and had a huge evolution, over the past decade, over the past few years. So when people hear Shopify, few may still picture a simple, online store tool for small brands in an out-of-the-box experience. But really, over the last few years, Shopify has very deliberately and successfully repositioned itself as really a full commerce platform. So that shift was really critical for companies thinking about quick scaling opportunities, complexity in their business models, in their e-commerce models, and most importantly for the conversation today, international growth. So a few key points that I wanted to really, highlight here is that Shopify really now, we should look at that as a SaaS, so a software as a service first, very strongly API-driven e-commerce platform. So loads of connection, and it really does integrate, and we'll see a lot more in a little bit with a lot of other platforms, which it didn't do before. Is a growing market share for SMEs, so Shopify Plus. Just to give you some examples in terms of data, Shopify today has roughly 17% of the global market share, whereas other platforms like maybe the bigger ones, WooCommerce, have 42%. So it's very much growing. It's becoming a big player in, across many industries, is B2C, D2C, direct to consumer, but very much B2B, wholesale, all of those hybrid models, perhaps, it really doesn't fit one categories. It really does allow flexibility and integrates everything from a single platform. And as I mentioned, for us, it's very, it's key for me to highlight the international piece, because it really Shopify and Shopify Plus are export ready by design. They allow for multi-currency, multilingual, payment gateway, logistics, and as you mentioned, integration with different systems. So it really is a very quickly evolving e-commerce stack, much more than just, your front end e-commerce website, which doesn't, however, stop being an e-commerce website. So, Shopify is built on different layers. And again, I thought it was interesting and maybe helpful to just break them down a little bit before we dive into the conversation about different elements and what works and maybe what doesn't work necessarily for everyone. So you have your baseline, where you have your products, your pricing, your orders, your customers. You can track all of your transactions, so to speak. So that's your e-commerce builder. But then you have your storefront, which is what your users see, how you build your brand, how you build your theme, and Susanna, to your point, how you build that trust. How do you bring people in and build on all of what your brand stands for and your business stands for. Then very important, your checkout and payment. So how do you track your conversions, but also how you remain compliant, how you look at a payment gateways that can be globally accessible, but also that will streamline your conversion. Think about, you have credit cards, but you also have Google Pay, Apple Pay, WeChat Pay, all of those different ways that really depending on where you market and where you sell in the world, you can optimize and you can adapt to really make the user and the buyer's journey as seamless as it possibly can be to increase sales at the end of the day. Also, I mentioned SaaS, API and integration, if you have an ERP, a CRM, OMS, and I apologize here, as marketers love an acronym. So, your all of your system, your customer, how your products coming in. So all of those can easily integrate through Shopify. So that starts becoming a lot more complex, a lot more exciting, but also a lot more to think about and to plan ahead before you just jump into launching a website. So based on that, the next section, we really wanted to highlight a little bit more what Shopify does well, also maybe what it doesn't. So looking at the technology ecosystem around it, what does it take? What does it mean to be scaling internationally with confidence, I would say. And then most important, but very important, measuring success. What is your return on investment on a platform like Shopify? How you measure that, and how do you need to think about that before, again, you dive and you launch your website and you start, promoting it and you start getting customers to it. Again, just going back before we dive into the pro and cons, a few points to highlight here on the next slides that I really at its core, Shopify remains a fantastic e-commerce platform. So it is extremely good at managing e-commerce fundamentals. Let's not get this wrong. Provides a stable, secure backbone that most brands can rely on as they grow from the get-go. However, there are a few things, to keep in mind. One of Shopify's most strategic advantages, it's indeed its ecosystem. Very few other platforms offer such a breadth of pre-built functionalities within it. So payment, logistics, integration, but also marketing. Whether you look at your SEO, your now this LM discoverability, we'll get to talk about a little bit later. All of these is embedded and encoded within Shopify. But it's important that you think strategically and you really plan for growth. You really think about how your website is supporting your business goals and not vice versa, to make sure that you have the right system and the right platform. And I think, Susanna, you had a few good examples that you wanted to walk us through in terms of what to consider, what's good, what's bad.
Yeah, I just wanted to summarize this on sort of one slide. For me, the big advantage of Shopify is sort of that speed to market, speed to launch, the stability of it. It is a big platform, and they are responsible. Shopify is responsible for uptime, hosting, and all the tech side, and the scalability. So you can go from solo trader to big company, all within one platform. So you don't have to build Shopify, and then once you reach a certain level, I've got 50 employees, I have to share, and you change platforms. So you can continue scaling with that. So there's the pros are quite well known, but I think it's really important to understand what the challenges are as well. So some of the it's Shopify is sort of marketed as a really easy, low risk solution, and it kind of is, but it also it depends on how well it aligns with your business goals and your business model. It depends also on your internal capabilities. So there are some challenges that you're going to have to be aware of. We'll talk a little bit more about apps and what are apps and what does it mean being app dependent and app sprawl and other things like that. Another thing that people don't always realize right from the beginning is how quickly the costs stack up. So it sounds like really affordable, but then, there's this cost and that cost. And suddenly you're looking at this pancake layer of costs every month. So there can be sort of surprises like, well, I didn't know that was a cost. Why is it a cost? So suddenly you're taking 2% of every, what is that? So there are things like that. And then if you've got complex ERP, and complex logistics and other systems that have to be built into it, you will have to do some configuration and some deep coding for that. And finally, from anyone who's in the tech side, tech people like ourselves tend to have another issue with Shopify, is that it is not as flexible as I would like. I can look at, anyone, Joelle or I could just, anyone from our team, we can look at a website and we know exactly which theme it is from Shopify. We see this again and again. Oh, it's a Shopify site. Why? Because it's all in little square boxes. So they all tend to kind of, there's a sameness, there's a rigidity. Those are the apps and that's it. So those are sort of the cons to be worth thinking about. I wanted to bring Lisa in here just before I get talking more about apps. Lisa, what is your view? Does this, do you agree with this?
For the most part, I do. And as far as being a techie and it being less flexible, and I totally agree with that. But at the same time, you really have to look at what are your goals,
Yeah.
And how you feel like you're going to get there. With us looking at Shopify and doing all the research, I did everything up front. But I also wanted to make sure that, like you said, to marry Shopify's base capabilities
Mm.
with our business goals. So that was the first step that I wanted to do. But also we did have to employ a developer
Yeah.
because some of our business practices and everything didn't is not, I mean, they're really personal to Sunnen. So in order to make sure that we could get our data out to Shopify and get it back in a way that we could utilize
Mm.
internally, we did have to employ a developer.
Yep. Okay. Thank
But
you
I
very
also
much.
I
Sorry,
also think that is when you're talking about apps, it does give you you dependent on them, but it does give you almost unlimited functionality that
Mm,
you can pick and choose from. But you have to be careful and choose the things that you really need and choose the things that you need first up front.
absolutely. And that brings me up to my segues beautifully. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Mhm.
Segues beautifully into these apps. What are apps? And who invented this? What are they? Shopify has got some crazy amount of apps, 13,000 little apps. What's an app? It's a plugin, basically. It's a thing that you bolt on to the Shopify platform in order to do a function. And very often they're built by third parties. They're built by a coding company, and they get a little bit of money from Shopify, like a little bit of sort of rental income from Shopify when Shopify markets this, or when someone uses their app. And as Lisa was saying, there are thousands of apps that you can choose from. And you need an app for currency translation. Okay, there's lots of apps for that. You need an app to highlight your discounts. Oh, lots of apps for that. You just choose which one you want. So there's, they're really strategic accelerators. They bolt on, you pay money for them, they bolt on, and they speed drive your functionality in each way. So your team can test them, you learn, you don't have a huge tech team behind you. You can just bolt on these apps and go with them. And as I said, they're like accelerators, and it's, I think, the fastest way you can get from one side to the other. How to choose the right one, and what that means. I think there's a golden rule we have when we're helping our clients with their Shopify is really to understand that this app solves a business case. It's not a short-term glitch or short-term pain point. It is a long-term, functionality that has to be solved. It is a business use case that has to be solved. And all of these apps also come with reviews and ratings, so you can go into that. And they all come with different types, levels of support. So really check out the apps. There's always other ones that if you don't like that one, there's another one that you can choose. Check them out. Make sure that that they fit the rest of your tech stack, that they have a reliable cadence of upgrades and support, especially. So if something goes wrong, who do you call? And that there's a very clear business use case for it, which is a long-term thing that you're solving rather than a short-term pain point. Just a little tip as well. We very often when we get in a new client in Shopify, when we sort of look under the hood, we find a lot of apps in there that are no longer used. And that kind of, it's like, dusting out your closets. Spring clean the thing, get rid of the old apps. They take up space, which makes your website heavier. And they can misalign other apps. They can sort of ricochet around and break things. So remember to remove obsolete apps. Next, I wanted also to say, sort of just apart from sort of the apps are both the really the strong thing about Shopify's environment is that it makes it scalable and makes it multifunctional and makes it very diverse, but it can also have a downside. Depending on each one of these bolt-ons can make your system quite complex and things, and that complexity can make your websites and your Shopify suddenly very heavy and difficult. And after all, a Shopify is all about user experience, something called UX. So the user experience is very, very important. It's that thing about the trust again, making sure that the trust is there because the user experience is so good. The user experience is not good when it's taken forever to load the thing. And things. So you want your website and your Shopify site to stay, clean and well done with good apps. The apps can also be quite rigid. They even if there's like 31,000 of them or so on, they just function as each tin is a different tin, as it were. You get one app, and that's what the tin does. That's what it does. And sometimes it's hard to marry the different ones. The other point about them is that they cost, and those costs start, stacking up over time. Even when you've got one of the cheaper forms of, and we'll go into cost later, one of the cheaper forms, you can start racking up the costs of these apps, and they suddenly sort of say, well, every month I've got to pay this. Whoa, are we sure about this? So it is, it's important to look at all of those for that. They're a very fast path to growth. They can also be sort of way down your website. They can also be the wrong one. So again, install an app because it fixes a long-term business problem, not because it fixes a symptom. And that's what we call this app sprawl. And what we tend to do is say there is ownership, an ownership of your online store. For Sun products, for example, a lot of that ownership rests with Lisa. So Lisa is the kingpin, if you like, the strategic nexus for Sun products Shopify site. So, nobody's going to go in and change apps and themes and add things without Lisa for that. So there's an ownership, which is really important to have in any thing. So there you go. So let's talk about now some sort of e-commerce must-haves. Let's move on to sort of e-commerce must-haves. What do they really mean by that? We said Shopify is very good at moving fast, but speed can magnify both the good and the bad. And brands that sort of struggle with these things are frequently missing some features. They're missing some foundations. They haven't got the original homework done. So strong foundations that are kind of invisible for a company. But if they're not strong foundations, they're very visible. So it's like housework. Nobody notices it when it's done, and they only notice when it's not done. Strong foundations, same thing. They only notice it, if you don't see the foundations of your Shopify on your website, that's because it's well done. Let's talk about some of those must-haves, Joelle.
Absolutely. The first thing for me always to mention when we talk about Shopify is to remember that everything within the system flows from your product data. So if your catalog structure is unclear, is a little bit messy, everything downstream, any searches, any filtering, any app integration, any API integration just becomes that little bit harder. So, we always say a bad product data is possibly the single most expensive mistake to fix down the line. And then it's harder to find where the fix needs to be upstream. So I just wanted to highlight here 2 or 3 main elements that really I would keep a close eye on when you start with the Shopify or really any other e-commerce portal for that matter. So a clear taxonomy. So how your product is organized into types, collection, categories, how you filter it. So this really drives your navigation, your on-site search, but also your SEO structure, how your customer will browse. All of that is going to really help standardize your reporting. So really you can compare performance across different categories, across different products, and all of that is going to be really, really key when we start talking about data and ROI. Variants and attributes is something that many Shopify owners pay little attention to when they set up. So this, your size, your color, your format, your pack size, whatever applies to your products or your services. The goal is very much to try and have predictable naming convention, good strict attribute rules so customers don't get confused, but also don't let your team create all that one-off variant or, we have these bundle that I've just set up out of the box, because that's going to break the system sooner or later. And again, this supports better filtering, improves data quality, and then helps making sure that if you connect, for example, here we have an example of a website, but also how the same product feed is managed through your Amazon and your Walmart marketplaces, for example. The simpler the taxonomy, the clearer the variants, the easier to manage and also to compare results across different marketplaces on your website, but also potentially other options that you have outside of your Shopify installation itself. Meta fields, again, this goes more in the realm of marketing rather than just your e-commerce, but is really, really key. This is really how you add structure, reusable product details that For example, think about nutritional info if you're selling anything food related, compatibility, FAQs, bundle logic, merchandising, anything that is seasonal. So metadata fields, if you're structured well, is really going to help the product being found, not just by your user, but also by the search engines. And, we cannot avoid talking about, your LLMs, your ChatGPT, your Gemini, Perplexity. Those meta fields are making your products and your website so much easier for the bots as well as for the human to understand. So really use it strategically, have a plan of action, and apply throughout. And all of this really allows you to have data and a product set that is ready to scale. Clean ID, consistent attribute, clear rules, system talk to each other reliably only if you have a clear pattern they can follow and clear data they can build upon. So I know that this is, the foundation, as Susanna mentioned, start strong and everything else really will follow so much easier once you've spent a little bit of time doing this. The next piece, again, that is driven still by how your website is organized at the back end is how it then is represented at front end. We know for e-commerce, for every website, but e-commerce much more so, a strong user experience or UX really leads to increased conversions. And what is a conversion here? We want to see people adding to basket, checking out, purchasing. So make sure that when you design, whatever theme you choose on your Shopify store is designed to be mobile first. We know that a lot of D2C and B2C purchases happen on mobile phones, but also in B2B, that multi-channel research is becoming so much stronger. So I might browse today, add to cart, and then come back tomorrow from a different device. So clear navigation, clear search, optimized checkout flows. Again, give your users the opportunity to, whether it is a direct e-commerce, can they pay through Apple Pay? Can they pay through Google Pay? Maybe, I am the first one that's a bit lazy when I see a credit card. I'm going to go all the way to the other room to find my wallet to get my card. Apple Pay is my go-to. So Shopify allows you for these integrations. Make sure that if it's relevant to you, you try and use them, or at least think about whether that's an option. For B2B, what is a card builder looking like? How easy it is for them to receive the quote? How easy is it for them to add to cart what they need? So all of that really allows you to increase conversions and increase your revenue. Trust signals, clarity. Susanna mentioned that at the beginning. It takes some trust to make a purchase through our website. So the cleaner the navigation, the easier it is for them. Have all of your trust signals there. The compliance is often managed through these payment gateways. If you use the right channels, then clarity is, built within, and it just makes that process so much easier. I mentioned several times B2B and B2C. It's very true that, blame Amazon, blame Shopify, but B2B buyers now expect the same level of user experience as your most standard e-commerce checkout. So really do think it through. Think as a buyer, not just as a lead generator, if you're looking at anything for your B2B. And again, I put it here. I know it's a hard truth, but if you have any friction in your checkout process, that customer is gone. Because if they're not purchasing from you, there are 6 or 7 other brands that are trying to get the same business. So do pay attention, not just to how your product is looking, but also what the experience is for your customers on your website and on your front end.
Joelle, I'm going to interrupt you now because I think this is a really important point that we've talked a lot about trust and things, and I think this is something, I just wanted to bring it up. I mean, it's a silly question, but if you go as a business or even as an individual, if you go on a website and something is clunky, the website loads slowly, it's misaligned, there are typos, the user experience is bad, it loads, all these things. Let alone if the checkout doesn't work. All these things, and your trust is gone. And I know what I would say. I would say, I'm never going on that website again if I can help it. It's probably hacking. I'm scared of it. It's going to infect my computer or something, So I wanted to ask this question just to make sure, you all realize how important that trust is. And the trust happens within a second. Within Google thinks it's below under 2 seconds. When you go onto someone's website, under 2 seconds, someone knows whether, someone feels instinctively whether to continue on that website or not. And guess what? Nobody is saying yes. Some people are saying, I might go back if I saw a discount.
It is what I would do, Susanna.
Okay, Joelle will do that.
Even have the chance.
Okay. But the vast majority of them are going, no, trust is gone. I'm not going back. So thank you very much. I didn't want to interrupt that flow, but I thought that would be a fun.
No, that's it's great to know, and exactly that. I mean, I think it's very important to bring that point, because sometimes we forget when we are working for our business to think as we were the consumer, what would we do? So I think that's a fantastic way to put that, and a fantastic way to think about it. I know I mentioned data quite a lot, and that's those of you who might have worked with me know that data is one of my favorite things, and I'll go into more detail later. But I just wanted to bring up one of the things that Shopify really does give you a strong starting point in is providing you with a lot of data within the platform itself. So if you're not too comfortable with your Google Analytics or other integrations out there that you could use to measure success, Shopify has a very good inbuilt analytics platform, and I do beg everyone to please use it, because UX remains one of the biggest drivers of success. However, if you don't look at your data, if you don't analyze how your customers, your potential customers, and those that you might have lost have interacted with your experience, then there is very little we can improve. So it's very important that as we say, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. So it's very important, and we'll go in a little bit more detail later about how to find, or like what to think about these KPIs. But what can we track? Conversion rates, average order value, cost per acquisition. All of those are key metrics to understand and to monitor, day in, day out, to really make sure that your e-commerce website can grow, can scale, and can really be that asset that you need it to be. So all of it is within Shopify. And I just wanted to put it out here because, this is for me one of the key elements to really use beyond just the apps and the functionalities that you need to sell. Another thing that I think is very important to mention, and something that sometimes gets overlooked, that even if you're not planning necessarily to expand internationally today, think of your Shopify project as if it might be. I think we always say, the decision that we make early, how you structure your product, your content, your checkout, your integration, either make international expansion straightforward, even when you decide to build a market upon your Shopify, or make it really expensive and painful. So retrofitting local market, a localization piece can be very costing. So multi-currency and local pricing, the local payment gateways, region-specific UX, language and content strategy. Really do think about all of these options for international markets when you start building your Shopify, and then growing to 1 market, 2, 3, 5 different stores is going to be seamless, and is really going to be a driver for growth, rather than becoming a bit of an obstacle because your website was set up a way that maybe doesn't work with your market expansion piece. So I just wanted to put it there nice and early. To go global, trying to think local, and it might be 1 market now, but it could be 5 in the future. So think about that and plan ahead if you can. We did touch upon the SEO piece when we looked at the metadata. For me, is key that when you do anything within Shopify or anything e-commerce based, whether D2C, B2C, B2B, you do think about how you're going to market your website. So, as we say, you cannot open a store and then not tell anyone that is there to shop in. So e-commerce success really, really means attracting the right customer and then delighting them throughout every step of the journey with your brand. That starts outside of your website, and then it's really carried forward throughout each of the touch points that they have with you. So here you can think about what does the URL structure looks like for SEO. The page speed, Susanna, you mentioned before, how important it is to keep it, nice and nimble, because if it takes 5 seconds to load, unfortunately this day we haven't got patient, we're gone. So that's super important for that UX. International SEO, as well as I mentioned, requires a little bit of planning, because how is your metadata going to translate? How is your product structure going to translate? Technical SEO, and now what we call GEO, AEO, generative engine optimization, AI engine optimization. How is your website not just found by Google and Bing, but also all of those other LLMs and channels that we're using to research? And this is very much what the team, Suzanne and I, talk about this every day with our team. Our services are very much focused on supporting businesses make the most of their e-commerce website by, supporting them with like very strategic and very targeted digital marketing campaigns and digital marketing strategies. So I know we don't have too much time today, but if anyone has any questions or would like to, know a little bit more about how we can support them or where to start, please do reach out. We'd love to have that conversation and, take it as a side. But I just really wanted to put it out there. To me, is key. If you're investing time, effort, and money in your Shopify experience, please don't discount the need to then look after it from a marketing point of view. Whatever that is, paid, SEO, GEO, all of them play together to make it a success.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joelle. I'm going to whip along now because time's running along. I'm going to talk very briefly. There's a couple of you actually asking this question. Yes, you will get the slide deck. Yes, you will get a recording of this in your inbox tomorrow. And if you want the slide deck separately, then ding me an email and I send you a PDF version of the slide deck. It can't go in the same email as your video recording. Scaling AI, because we have to talk about AI. Some things about the international again, and some cross-border sales, and then after that we're going to go through some takeaways and question time. So scaling, what do we mean by scaling? Scaling can be either new markets, new types of customers. It can be international. So you can have horizontal scaling, vertical scaling, and geographic scaling, basically. There's lots of different ways that you can scale with Shopify, from multiple stores to Shopify Plus to Shopify Markets. We'll talk about those. And I think the key to remember is that as you scale, things become more complex. And so a lot of that complexity has to be thought of right in the beginning. If you think of these things early on and start preparing for them, then they follow logically quite well. If not, you get really stuck and have to start unknitting things and pulling things around. So a couple of things that Shopify offers. First of all, they offer things, as I said, single store or multiple stores, Shopify Plus, and Shopify Markets. Those are the four big choices, more or less, that you have. There's a fifth one as well, but we won't talk about that because that's only on apps and things. Out of these, there are different cost structures. There's different pros and cons to each type, depending on your business goals. Single stores, for example, they work really well for very early expansion, very focused on one market. A little bit of cross-border, but one market, or very similar markets. Multiple stores have challenges with regards to tax and legal requirements and things like that. Because you'll have multiple stores, that means you'll have different compliance areas. And there will be very strong needs and requirements for localization. So if you have a store in Canada, it looks different from your store in Mexico. The colors are different, the verbs are different, let alone the language. So, the multiple stores can be different like that. Shopify Plus is usually used by B2B. Or companies that have multiple market requirements. It's a lot more expensive, but it has a lot more functionality. And then there's something called Shopify Markets. That is really for the big international growth. That's the one that's going to be really exporting a lot and relies on a lot of international growth. And with that, the cross-border complexity that goes with it. So that really brings us to the question of something called localization. We've done a lot of work on this. There's a ton of research on our website. which you can download for free. If you go to the resources section, we have other webinars all about localization. Localization basically means putting yourself in the shoes of the buyer. So not your shoes, your buyers, the searcher shoes. It's respecting the local buyer persona. So what do they see? What do they want? What builds trust for that local buyer persona? If you're targeting the Japanese market and the whole website, okay, maybe you translate it into Japanese, but the whole website doesn't take into account other sensitivities and sensibilities, doesn't have the right payment gateways, doesn't have the right, language and color, all those cultural aspects, then no one's going to feel comfortable with it, and then they won't break that trust that you need for that. So localization is being relevant to the local buyer. I've put on this one slide the 10 criteria that we use for localization. So as you can see, there's a lot of different criteria for this. And again, drop a question if you want to hear more about it, or else go to our website. There's tons of stuff on that. We can't not talk about AI, because in digital marketing at the moment, it's all about AI and artificial intelligence, and it is an enormous enabler for e-commerce. And I can see Lisa smiling away at this, so I'm really pleased about that. AI, we've said in the beginning, e-commerce is very competitive. E-commerce is tough. There's a lot of other stores out there selling very similar products. It's, the pricing is bad, it's tough, it's complex, and so on. And a lot of the software now that we're using with our clients are AI enabled to help this. It is allowing you to really up the game in terms of the experience and things. And a couple of examples, I'm going to go through this very quickly. One of the major aspects of AI is that it allows you to do what's called hyper-personalization, which means that your website and your Shopify can really get very granular in terms of what your customers want and how they're looking at things. So that's a tremendous asset that AI is bringing to the e-commerce world. In this one slide, top's cut off anyway. In the one slide, I tried to say, the types of AI that are being used. There's types of machine learning, natural language processing, and now the translation apps are good enough that you can get really good translation apps, and that will help you go internationally. Lisa was talking earlier about going possibly into Mexico. There are really good apps now for Mexican Spanish that you can plug on and incorporate into your Shopify. Computer vision, because nobody wants to read anymore. They all just want to go and look at the images, and that's incredibly important in today's world as well. The other point about AI is that it allows you to have scalable content. I'm Chief Content Officer, by the way, and content is the bane of everybody's existence. And I can see Lisa smiling again. Those blogs, those keywords, and how to make it interesting. And there's a lot of really good AI functionality that we can have. Obviously, it's always human-led. Just AI tools to make it faster, sharper, better, and things. Besides AI, I think the other point we wanted to talk about in terms of scaling is operational readiness. And that means getting all your ducks lined up. It means that your logistics are working, that your fulfillment's working, that all of the aspects of e-commerce are functioning absolutely flawlessly, so that there's no glitch at all in this, and just making sure that's all lined up before you go to market. So you can do all this before you actually launch on your Shopify platform, because you don't want to do this afterwards, believe me. And then if you're doing it correctly, you can easily scale. Again, you can go further out faster. A couple of things that Shopify does. We've talked a lot about things that Shopify does in this sense. A couple of things that Shopify does not do that you're going to have to get into your toolbox as well. So Shopify does all those multi-currency things, that it scales fast, it does all that, local payment methods, regional storefronts and themes. A couple of things it does not do. It does not do well on compliance, digital compliance, things like GDPR. It does not do good on tax analysis and VAT analysis. You're going to have to do the homework yourselves on that. And again, I'm glad to see Lisa's head nodding on this one. This is like definitely yes. All those regulations about product labeling, about regulations, about legal obligations. Shopify says, no, that's not us. And finally, it does have marketing help. If there are aspects that you can measure, particularly in terms of the analytics, but you need to do the digital marketing. No good opening a store and not telling anybody about it. No good making all that investment and then not shouting it out and showcasing it to the world. So get your digital marketing hats on. Joelle, I've left you like 2 minutes to talk about costs and KPIs.
I'll take that. I'll go through quickly. There were only a few points that I just really wanted to highlight, and it goes back to what we've discussed earlier as a bit of a summary. Shopify is often positioned as a low-cost solution, and at an entry level, it really is. Cost can, however, become meaningful, really only when viewed in context of scale, capability, and then outcome. So for me, the real question here is not how cheap or how expensive is Shopify, but really what does it replace? So what's your return on investment? So if we look at the slide that we have now, we have 5 Shopify plans available, 4 for selling via website and 1 for selling on social media and apps, different ways of looking at that. So it really does depend on what you're looking for and what your cost and what your goals are. And this goes back to the idea of have a plan, track it, and then make sure that visible costs of Shopify are straightforward, subscription fee, transaction cost, but they're only the tip of your iceberg, the starting point. Monthly plans can scale by capability, transaction fee vary by plan and gateway, but really think about your total cost of ownership. So what does the platform, the app, the development, your team, risk and potentially, what downtime avoidance would look like, future changes, and I'll throw it in there because to me it's really important. Your marketing, make sure that you do set aside a little bit of budget to make sure that you do market your website, because the worst thing you can do is you spend all of this time and energy and money in creating a fantastic experience, but then it sits there and no one really finds it. So that would be terrible. So do keep in mind your marketing cost, add that to it, and then have a really strong plan moving forward. I think the next section is very much, again, from my point of view, linked to that. Make sure that you understand what you're trying to achieve, what your business goals are, what ROI means for you, and then work backwards, set some really strong goals, some KPIs, key performance indicator, what matters to you and how you're going to track it, whether it is through an analytics dashboard, whether it is through your Shopify analytics and markets. But measure your commercial KPIs. What's your conversion rate? What's your average order value, lifetime value of your customers? How much does it cost you to acquire new customers or retain existing customers? But also your export success. What is your profitability at each market that you're entering? What's the local conversion and retention? That's something that is fluctuations that is important to keep in mind. And what does it take to scale that from an operational point of view? And then you have, your costs based on time. How long is it going to take you to launch? Who are you going to need in your team and your external team? What's your platform stability? Are we risking any downtime? And then overall, how long it will take, or what will it take to maintain that operations that you're building globally? So I've run through literally 1 minute because I know we've got a couple of closing comments, but to me, data is key, and start from the bottom, start from what you want to achieve, and then work your way backwards towards the bigger numbers, and all of that is going to give you that full picture. But please do look at it, do track it. Don't forget about it the moment that your Shopify website launches.
Joelle is known as the local, the analytics data queen. So we're really down to the last minutes here. We just thought we'd give you some easy wins, some takeaways, for that. So just some quick slides just on this sort of, what's our checklist, if you like? Well, some of the things that we're looking at. That relevance to the local buyer that builds trust over time. means getting all the attributes and actions all lined up well in advance. Whether it's compliance, whether it's payments, all of that has to be thought about in advance before you start, before you launch. So for our point of view, and I think Lisa also shared this, the best possible tool you have in terms of your sales is going to be your website. It's going to be your Shopify site, your portal. And if combining that with digital marketing, that's your sales rep. That's how people sell in today's world for that. And, just have a good look at your own website now. Look at it, make sure that it is, and don't forget to look at it regularly. It needs to be maintained and brought up to speed, updated. Bring it alive. Make sure it's there and working hard for it. You make sure that it's doing its job. If you're looking at first steps, here's a slide for you to think about. Is Shopify the right platform? Yes or no? And one thing you should do is make a 3 to 5 year plan, which has that vision going outwards, so that you're saying, if Shopify is the right, I'm going to think in 3 years' time, in fact, the cost is not this like $1 a month thing. No, I'm going to be at $2,000 a month. I've got to really think about this. What assets do I bring into the table here? What countries should I be looking at right from the start? What KPIs? What are my key performance indicators that Joelle mentioned? How am I looking at my analytics? And what is my digital marketing strategy? I've put in a link to our blogs and to the resource section of our website. There's lots of free downloadables there on AI and on websites and on e-commerce. There's also lots of stuff in other places. HubSpot, we are HubSpot partners, gold partners. We're also a Shopify partner, by the way. We're also a WooCommerce partner and a Google partner. Gosh, certifications all over the place. But there's I also like reading, so I put some books up there as well. If you want to, if you're short on something to read for that next long flight, or you're snowed in because of this snowstorm, there's lots of stuff to read. Poof, we're a little bit over time. I wanted to ask Lisa, just as a conclusion as well, Lisa, your view. You've had a very successful time with Shopify. You're liking it. Would you encourage all kinds of companies? Are there exceptions for you? Are there types of companies that you think don't watch, or any company for Shopify? What's your thought?
I think basically Shopify is good for any type of company. If you have something that you want to sell, it's flexible enough where you can set it up to sell anything. My biggest takeaway for everybody today is, if you're looking at, no matter what platform you're looking at, look at the base functionality first, and how you can utilize as much of that as you possibly can before you think about which apps to get. Because then that way you can mitigate your costs and control those as you're planning on scaling. Always look at where you want to go, but utilize as much of the base functionality as you can. And don't worry about being perfect. You can launch being good enough. It does not have to be perfect, because it's tech. You can always change and modify and change.
Absolutely. Thank you very, very much. Anne also put something in, just a reminder of the conference. Drop this in the chat box for everybody as a link. Chat box, there we go. Send to all. So that's the Nashville event for NADEC, May 12th to 13th. And Tom and Anne will be there, of course, as well as all those guests that Tom mentioned earlier. There's a bunch of questions, but we're out of time. We spoke too much. I will answer the questions directly via email. A lot of them are quite technical or very specific to individual companies in any case. Excuse me. So I will answer them by email directly, if that's okay. I wanted to thank Anne, Tom, Lisa, and my colleague Joelle for a great webinar. Thank you all very much. Tom, Anne, any closing remarks?
No, just thank you, Susanna. We really appreciate our partnership with IBT Online, and we look forward to hopefully seeing many of the participants on the webinar in person in May. and also to our next IBT webinar, which I believe is in March
I think so, yeah, mid-March.
or April. I don't have the exact date in front of me.
All right. Thank you all very, very much. Have a great rest of the day and keep shopping. So, okay, take care. Thank you all very, very much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.